I'd like to introduce our two panelists here. Paige Ross, Global Head of Human Resources at Blackstone, and also Damien Hopper-Campbell, Vice President of Chief Diversity Officer over at eBay here. Our topic is going to be about becoming an employer of choice. How do we become an employer of choice? How do your companies become an employer of choice so that that candidate out there goes to you? Let's turn very quickly to you two and answer that first question. This is the title. How do you become an employer of choice, Paige?
I think part of it is making sure that you're going out to a broad group of people and making sure you're continuing to widen your net for candidates, as well as making sure that they want to come to your firm and they want to come to your company because it has the right culture, they can have the right career. And so we're very much focused on making sure that people who join Blackstone can have a long-term career with us and they're joining a culture where they could be very successful.
All right, bring up two adjectives that you think best describe Blackstone to candidates.
That's a great question. I would say culture and meritocracy.
Culture and meritocracy.
Yeah.
All right, let's deep dive just a little bit more.
Yeah.
Culture, we sort of get it, but give us a couple lines there, and then we'll go to meritocracy.
So culture, in order to be successful at our firm, we think about it as you have to work extraordinarily hard, and we do believe that investing is a team sport. So in order to be successful in a team environment, you have to be nice. You have to feel like, okay, if I come to this firm, I'm not only going to work hard, because if you think about it, you spend more time in work more than your family a lot of the times. So you have to think about the people that you're going to be surrounded with, you want to be with. And we believe that investing is a team sport. So in order for you to be successful, you have to be able to be collaborative and invest in a team environment.
Got it. All right, let's pause there and bring in Damien. Damien, how does your company become an employer of choice?
Sure. First, good morning, everybody. Employer of choice by being authentic. I think in this day and age of transparency, whether you like transparency or not, the way that you win is by being authentic. You don't sell someone a bad bill of goods and put out a bunch of glossy photos on your website and in your pamphlets, and then they get there and it's not like that. For me specifically in my role as Chief Diversity Officer, when I'm talking to underrepresented minority groups, I tell them the truth about technology. I tell them the truth about our industry, and that in certain cases they are going to continue to be the minority. Worst thing I could do is to tell them that the environment there is one that it isn't, and then they get there and I've immediately lost trust. And with social media, you lose trust with one person and that amplifies. So I think the way that you do it is by really being authentic and transparent and trying not to have too much of a delta in between what your company actually stands for and believes and what you do and what you're saying to people.
I think authenticity definitely is a buzzword over the past few to several years. Everyone, a lot of companies say, we are this, we are that.
Right.
But how do you make sure that that is communicated to the people who you're trying to get your message to? Because we've seen a lot of, at least in the environmental sense, a lot of greenwashing or a lot of social washing that companies will say, you know, I'm going to hitch my coattails onto this.
Yeah. It's difficult and it's dynamic, and we have not perfected a formula that says, here's exactly how you do it. The reality is that I think before you can even go out to people who maybe you want to attract to the company, the first thing you need to do is to be honest with the people in the company. And so our CEO, Devin Winnig, when Charlottesville happened, which was right around the same time, I believe, as some of the Me Too movement really gaining steam, my CEO was like, look, before I say anything or go tweet about this, I'm going to send a note to the company and to let people know that we stand for inclusion. And I think when you do things like that on a consistent basis, it's hard to choose which ones do you say something about and which ones do you not. But when you do things like that consistently internally, the people who are inside of the company then become your champions outside of the company. And so there's less of a reliance on fancy marketing pitches and more of a reliance on word of mouth and real human beings referring others.
Yeah, I would say that even if no marketing works, it has to be the people that are part of your firm or your company, because they're the ones who live and breathe it every single day. And if they feel they can't bring themselves to work every day, then they're telling their friends and they're telling their friends, and you don't get anybody.
Yeah, especially in this day and age where communication is direct to the consumer, the client, and it's not so much the PR side of things, but you know, in this age of Twitter, everyone gets their note out directly to everyone.
Sure.
And referrals is one of your best tools to recruit people because you trust the people that that are going to be talking about your firm. Nobody's recommending somebody they don't think is good, so that is your best tool for recruitment. And if you get that wrong because they're not bringing themselves to work and they're not feeling they could be successful, you're lost before you start.
All right. In terms of leadership development, this is something we chatted about on our call when we prepped this last week. Talk about how your companies use that in order to retain people, because we can attract with good salaries, with good benefits, but over the course of maybe after a few years, people need to see some change within themselves or they get bored, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So there are many different aspects of leadership development. It is absolutely a core priority for eBay. One of the things that struck me, I started at eBay in mid-July of 2016, and my CEO said, why don't you come in 3 weeks early? I know that you're not going to officially be an employee, but we convene 1,000 of our senior-most leaders from across the globe in San Jose, which is where our headquarters is, for 3 days. And we get together, we talk about new product, we talk about strategy, and also build relationships with each other. The fact that the company spends that kind of capital and investing in their people to bring people in all the way from Istanbul to Seoul into San Jose to convene, to me was huge, and I got an opportunity to address that group before I ever started. There are other ways that we do it. Some are more bespoke in nature. So for instance, in our core product and tech organization, or our engineering organization, we are in the midst of launching a leadership development program for director and above women in that organization. It's going to be a 2-day program that then lasts throughout the year. And then one of the things we said was, well, it will be great to convene this group of women, but if we're really going to move the needle, we have to have men in the conversation too. And so we've added an additional day where that cohort of women who have been in it for a couple of days will then be joined by the other director plus men. And we're not just going to focus on gender, we're going to focus on other aspects of diversity and inclusion as well. And so those are the kinds of things that we're doing, both in a more formal way, but then also in a more bespoke and customized way.
Yeah, and for us, we spend a ton of time on development. I mean, if you think about it, we spend an exorbitant amount of time recruiting people, and what a shame it would be if you didn't get the ROI on that investment. So we want to make sure that we're developing people so they could have long careers. We've probably 2 different ways we do it. One is an apprenticeship model, and so we believe that you have to develop your investors for long term. So from the start of somebody coming in as a summer analyst, they are put in teams to work on investments. So we build up their functional expertise. Separately, a couple of years ago, we started focusing on leadership and management training. So you can not only build great investors, but you need to build great managers and leaders. And as we get bigger, it becomes so much more critical to develop those skill set and that muscle membrane within our teams. So we've actually built it out in 3 different ways. The biggest one is making sure that we're building the connectivity across the team, also building self-awareness and learning as individuals, and then learning how they could collaborate across the different areas in the firm. And so we've built it at every single level as people get promoted. So we call them cohorts. So anywhere from the analyst level to the associate to our principal level, we've started to build it up so that way not only do they develop those skill sets, but they develop those relationships across.
Damien, just now you talked a little bit about gender, and I want to go there, especially in this age of the Me Too movement, et cetera. Looking across, it looks like we have a pretty good mix of 50-50 men and women here, which is great. Here at Bloomberg, we strive on every panel to at least have one woman, if not more, and also on Bloomberg Television and in our reporting as well. But how do you attract and make sure that there is equal candidates, at least, and hires there for both of your companies? Damien, let's go to you first.
Sure, yeah. I can't take credit for this. I had a great professor in graduate school named William Julius Wilson, who's one of the foremost leaders on social justice. And he said in everything that you do, there are 2 parts. There's the cultural part, and then there's the structural part. And you can't have real change without attacking both of them. And so in answering your question, we look at it from both of those lenses. And so what I mean by that is the cultural part is really about behavior, right? You can change policies, you can change all kinds of things, but if people don't really feel it personally, and they think that it's just the HR team telling them you have to hire more women and more people of color. Well, we all know how that ends up working, and it doesn't work very well. And so we spend a lot of time actually trying to meet people where they are on this journey, helping people to understand why diversity and inclusion is important to eBay, but also understanding why it's important to them from exactly where they are. And we find that when we have those very real and honest conversations with people, then when you put in the structural pieces, right? So whether that is, as Chief Diversity Officer, I own university recruiting. That was a very bold move that we decided to make so that it would be an inherent part of the strategy. And when I picked up the book of schools that we went to, there were no historically black colleges, there were no Hispanic serving institutions, and there were no women's colleges, right? And so we were very deliberate about saying on our roadmap for the next few years, we will be going to women's colleges and partnering up with external organizations. When you marry that with the cultural piece, which for us meant getting male engineers to actually come to the women's colleges and come to the women's events and immersing them in a sea of 20,000 women in technology. So gone are the excuses of, I can't find talented women in technology. When you do those two things and then you make sure that you're going to those schools, you have great outcomes. And so that outcome for us has been, 2015, we were at about 25% women in our intern class, whereas last summer we're almost at 50%. So those are the kinds of things we're doing on both the cultural and structural side.
Great, thank you. Paige.
Yeah, I would echo that. You can't do one without the other, because if it's going to be, and I say this coming from HR, if you're going to be where HR is saying you have to do this,
right,
it falls flat right from the bat. We've approached it a couple of different ways. One of the things that we found is we weren't getting the applicants to apply. So years ago, we started with how do we educate and get closer to people earlier on in their career. So we started 2 different programs where we're attracting women and diverse candidates sophomore year in college. And so what we're doing is spending 2 days before they're even eligible to apply for our summer analyst class, and we're getting to know them. So we invite them in, and we actually have the Diverse Leaders Program tonight that's starting. And we bring them in, they get to know our most senior people in our organization. We train them, we teach them how to interview, we build mentoring relationships, and we build that for the next 6 to 9 months, so that way when they can apply, they're more tethered to Blackstone, and they're more likely to convert over. And so we started that both for women program and Diverse Leaders Program, and we've now exploded it to our London office as well, and next it will be to Asia. But we think that to get people interested in us earlier is probably the best way to continue it.
Great, thank you. I would like everyone to take out their phones because we have our first polling question. So go ahead and do that.
I don't know if you should be nervous
why don't
now?
we go ahead and put that up on the board here. Again, you have to go to corporaterep.app, I believe, right? And if you can go ahead and put that up on the board, we can have our first polling question. So go ahead and get that ready on your phones. And there we are. So your live polling, this is the question. What is the most important to you in a company when you look to apply for a job? And these are what you see on your own app here. So go ahead and log in your vote. And this is live polling, so you'll see these change. Don't be swayed by what you see on the screen. More professional development is number 1. Best salary possible. Let's be real. A company that reflects my values. Corporate perks, good health plan, free snacks. Like here at Bloomberg.
I noticed that downstairs.
All right, yeah, keep on going. We'll just do this for another 30 seconds here. And as you see these change, actually, I'm going to ask you two to weigh in on your reaction here, too. So it looks like that a company that reflects my values, shared values, really beats so far. Keep on logging them if you haven't just yet. And then in number 2, it seems like it's more professional development. Corporate perks, I guess free snacks aren't so great as something that people are looking for in company. All right, looks like we've sort of come out to where we're going to end up. So let's go to a company that reflects my values. I'd like to think at least that with this crowd, it's not really so much of a surprise. But Paige, just weigh in on this, and maybe anything else that sticks out to you on the board.
I actually think for us, and I think for people in general, what we're finding more and more, especially with this generation growing up, it's that they want to make sure they're joining a firm that actually is giving back to the community, that reflects their values, and they can have a long-term career there. And so we make sure that that everything that we do. I mean, I sort of think about it this way: we don't make widgets. All we are is human capital, and so the people that we hire have to reflect the values of the people that we're actually recruiting for in the future. And so finding people that actually want to do good work, want to work hard, and want to have a long-term career is critical to our success. And part of that is once you bring them in the door, making sure that you're developing them for the future. And I do think this next generation, we will lose them if we don't continue to develop them.
All right. Damien, feel free to weigh in on that, but I'm sort of curious if we can push it ahead to professional development and best salary possible. I'm actually a little bit surprised that maybe it's only 10% or so.
It's number 5. Every time when people leave, if you look at surveys over years and years, they always say, most people don't leave for less money. So let's be clear on that. But most people, they don't pick up the phone because they're going to make an extra $5,000. They pick up the phone because they're looking for something that they may not have where they are.
Right. Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. I think on the professional development side, here's how I read that. I don't necessarily read that, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to speak for those of you who chose that, but for me at least, when I think about professional development, it's not necessarily, can you put me in a course that teaches me how to do public speaking or X, Y, and Z. It's really, kind of to your point, it's about opportunity, right? It is about, are you going to put me in roles that give me visibility, that give me an opportunity to grow some muscles, that give me an opportunity to stretch and maybe learn new things. I think the worst thing in an environment where technology is always hitting us with new information, and so we always want more and more and more, the worst thing you could do inside a corporation is put someone in a role and on a path that's stagnant, right? Many times when you see people leave organizations, they're leaving because they got a chance to do what their boss has been doing for 5 years, and maybe their boss hasn't been giving them those growth opportunities, and now they're going to be their boss at another company, right? And so I really see professional development as something that's very experiential and hands-on. And the salary piece, yeah, I mean, it is what it is ultimately. Nobody wants to work somewhere and get paid a ton of money, and it sucks to work there, right? So.
Yeah, and I echo the piece around professional development. Everybody who's looked at a performance review, if I see something that says, take this class, take this class, take this class, all I think is they don't know the person that they're talking to, because it's what is that they're going to learn experientially that will help increase their capabilities. That's what everybody wants. People don't want to go to a 2-hour class and say, that's my development for the year.
Damien, to your point earlier about trying to get the job that your boss has.
Yes.
That's good, and I think we expect most of us probably wanting to do that. But the higher you go, the fewer jobs there are. So how do we figure that out?
So the higher you go, the fewer jobs there are in that one function, maybe. But at eBay, I mean, for a long time, we've had a very robust mobility program. Okay. Where I've met people. I met the first ever hire of eBay, Chris, who still works at eBay.
This is the first hire.
First hire ever that Pierre hired. And Chris, I mean, he's full of energy, but Chris has done a gazillion different things, as you can imagine, at eBay. And it's something that we encourage. So if I ever get somebody who comes to me and I can tell they've got that itch to kind of leave, or I feel like, hey, are you interviewing? The first thing I'm going to say to them is, 1, I'm invested in your career, whether it's here or outside of eBay. But 2, are there other things that maybe you want to do? And one of the things that we try to encourage our managers to do, to the point that you made about not just take this class, that class, and the third, is that when you're having these career development conversations with folks, to have that conversation about what does 5 years look like? And are there mentors, if you are currently on the finance team, but you have a yearning to build some communications muscles, are there mentors who we know who we can put you in touch with on the comms team? Or are there projects that will give you exposure to that? In my opinion, if you are a leader or a manager and the first time you realize that somebody wants to do something else is when they're handing you your resignation, that's your fault. Bottom line, right? So that's how I think about it.
And that's where culture comes in.
Yeah.
Because if you're in an environment where to talk to your boss about going someplace else and that's shut down, the first thing you're going to get is the resignation the next time, but you're also not building a culture where people can actually build a career there.
That's right.
And so making sure that that's not acceptable to say my talent is hoarded by me. Talent is the company's talent,
Yeah.
and that has to be built into the culture.
Right. Thank you. In terms of culture, let's go into demographic changes here too, because I think just in the past few weeks there was a report that said that millennials now make up the biggest portion of the working class here now. What are their values? And then if we push ahead a little bit more into Gen Z, what are their values? Because I think at least a lot of folks have seen, we've read that millennials are so spoiled, they just demand so much. But that may not necessarily be true, actually.
I want feedback. I mean, and I don't think that that's different than our generation. Our generation maybe they wanted it, they were okay not getting it maybe. This generation is not going to stand still for not getting feedback. They're going to want the opportunities, they're going to want to know what am I doing well, what do I need to do better, and how am I going to develop those skill sets. But I wanted feedback when I was growing up in my career and still do. This generation just won't tolerate not getting it, is what I'm seeing.
Yeah, but look, I love millennials. Like, I'm so tired
You
of
said it in a way like you don't.
No, not at all. No, I really do. And I said it because I'm somewhat fatigued by the rhetoric that's out there, that they're lazy and entitled, et cetera. And by the way, if they are, it's the parents' fault. Right? Like parents.
Parents
I'm sorry. So at a previous employer, I was asked to go really deep on the millennial generation and to figure out how do you manage millennials as if it's rocket science. And so I got the nickname of the chief millennial officer. And what you find is exactly what you said. They want feedback, but it's not so much the challenge here, and I think this is the case with a lot of things on the diversity and inclusion side, is we see the outcome, but we don't take the time to understand why. So yes, they want feedback, but like, duh, if mobile native technologists, which is what many millennials and Gen Zers are, have grown up. I mean, you're on planes and you see 2-year-olds on iPads using them better than some people who are grown adults can. So what happens on social media? If I'm on Insta, if I'm on Snapchat, if I'm on Facebook, I post a picture of what I'm eating currently or where I'm on vacation. And then what happens? What do I wait for? Like. And I do that over and over and over again. So of course, when I get to the workforce, there's no separation. I want to know immediately when I just busted my tail, because I'm not lazy, but I busted my tail on a project, I want to know immediately, how did I do? And the challenge is that many of the managers are not millennials and maybe didn't grow up as native technologists, and so it comes across as super annoying, or why do you always want feedback? But like, really the goal is we have to do a better job at understanding why those behaviors are, instead of labeling, boxing people and making it a bad thing. Because in reality, every generation has talked nonsense about the generation that's come after them. This is no different.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
And then getting feedback one time a year is ridiculous.
Yeah,
and so like the standard performance reviews, where I'm going to wait till 364 days of performance and then give you feedback, that doesn't work. It didn't work in our generation. It's not working in this generation.
Yeah.
You know, but a lot of folks, a lot of C-suite folks, especially here, the question might have just popped in, I don't have time.
It takes very short time. If you come out of a meeting, and I used to do this thing where I would take a piece of paper and draw a line, what you did well, what you didn't do well. It takes 2 seconds to say, here's the 2 things you did well, here's 2 things you could have done that would have been more impactful. It's just not that hard. What's harder is waiting 364 days to say, okay, what did this whole year look like?
You know what doesn't take that much time? Is when you are a CEO and you're in the car headed to the airport, to shoot a text or an email to that employee, and it shouldn't just be millennials, right? All of your employees. Yeah. To just say 2 words, nice job. Like, don't underestimate the importance of you as a leader and the weight that you hold and how quick that is. It doesn't have to be a one-on-one 30, 45-minute sit down every single time.
Got it. So we're talking about communication.
Absolutely.
We're talking about interactivity. Yeah. We're talking about leadership development and also demographic change and that two-way street. All right. Thank you very much. This has been a terrific conversation. I wish we could continue onwards, but we have more panelists to come ahead, and make sure to get them in the networking seminar, because I think you probably all want to continue talking with them. Paige Ross and Damien Hopper-Campbell, thank you very much.
Thank you.